Okay, so good evening,
Please
everyone.
mute.
Somebody's requesting to record this meeting locally.
No, we can't record it locally.
No, okay. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Amanda Berry. I'm from Loughborough University, Loughborough Business School, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. Ruby has invited me to run this session on CV crafting and selling yourself. Can I just ask that everybody puts themselves on mute?
Sumaya, too, can you please mute yourself?
By your active, set it aside.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so as I say, delighted to be here and thank you all for coming on a Sunday evening. So we're going to talk today about writing CVs, and the main point of a CV is to get you a job, but essentially the main purpose of the CV is to get you an interview to start with. So once you turn up to an interview with an employer, that's when you impress them and obviously get the job. So the CV is the starting point of your application. So we're going to talk about how you sell yourself in a way on that document, that single or two sides of A4 paper, in a way that makes an employer want to interview you.
Yes, you find out the procedures for.
Evans, please mute.
There's a threshold for the.
Evans.
Amanda, would you be able to mute? Evans, okay, it's muted.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So we're going to talk about how you present yourself best for success in the future. We're going to talk about recruitment from the employer's perspective. So thinking about what the employer is thinking about when they're recruiting you. We're talking about tailoring and structuring your CV. Shall I just mute everybody? There we go. Hopefully that's muted everybody. I might have muted you as well, Ruby, in the process, but hopefully you can unmute yourself at the same time if you wanted to. Okay, so we're going to talk about, as I said, you presenting yourself best for success and how an employer thinks when they're looking at your CV document. We're going to go through how best to structure your CV and how to tailor it to each employer that you apply to. Obviously, when you're presenting yourself to an employer, you need to be positive about yourself. You've all got lots of skills and qualities that an employer is interested in, and it's quite difficult to be positive about yourself when you're going through that job application process. So we're just going to talk about how you are positive yourself without coming across as though as though you're bragging. It's
just love a big black dick.
It's all about the evidence that you present. And then we're going to talk about that evidence. So the importance of having relevant recent evidence for all of the skills that you've got. Okay, so there's several different stages to this. So I realise that you're all at different points in your education. Some of you have just started university, you're only in your first years. Some of you are a bit later in your education, you're getting ready to graduate and apply for jobs. So you're all at different stages. So
Amanda, speak up, please.
Quite generic.
Clark, stop.
Oh.
I think Clark needs to go.
Sorry, can everybody hear me?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Can hear you.
Good. Okay, so we're going to talk about the evidence that you've got for your skills and the importance of that being relevant, obviously, to the jobs that you're going for, and the importance of it being recent and coming from a variety of different sources. So that's what we're going to cover today. And I've got an example of a CV to show you, and I will share that template with you so that you can have a go and go and create your own CV when we've finished the session. Okay, so, oops. So we're going to talk about actually tackling a job application. Can whoever has drawn pictures over the slides delete that, please? So tackling a job application. First of all, you need to think about the employer that you're applying to. Think about the skills that that employer is looking for. Now, if you're at the point where you actually have a job application, an actual job description to look at, then that's relatively simple. But you may be at the stage where you're creating a generic CV that you're going to then use to tailor to different employers afterwards. But if you have a job description ready that you're going to apply to, then obviously you can look at the actual job description and think about the skills that that employer is looking for.
Sorry, Amanda, I want to take the person drawing out. So that's what I have.
That's fine.
Yeah, I need to take the person out. So change.
You have the power to evict.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Let me make you a host now.
Okay, good. So, okay. So I need to go back to, can I share my slides again? Right, I need to reshare the slides, don't I? Share. Okay, can you still see that, Ruby?
Yes.
Good. Okay, apologies for that, everybody. Okay, so if you have a job description that you've already found for an employer that you want to apply to, then you need to be thinking about the skills that that employer is looking for. Now, obviously, if you are in a particular discipline, such as engineering or economics, for example, then you may have, Ruby, do you want to remove that person as well? You may have specific technical skills that the employer may be looking for. They may have specific part of the job that they want you to do that will need technical skills. If you're going for a creative job, then they're going to need you to be, you know, a creative person. But the majority of employers are looking for some skills that are all very generic to all employers. So they need you to be a nice, kind person who they would like in their workplace. They need you to be able to communicate effectively. They perhaps need you to work well in a team. They perhaps need you to be quite independent and able to work, you know, independently. So there are.
Amanda, sorry, I would have to take this person out and it's gone out.
I'll keep
Okay.
going. So yeah, there's lots of generic skills that every employer is looking for. So your ability to work in a team, your ability to communicate, your ability to take the initiative, all of these kind of skills. And most of you will have these kind of skills, that you've reached a certain level of education where, you know, you've got lots of experience from different parts of your life where you can articulate examples of where you've demonstrated these skills. So the best thing to do when you've actually got an actual job description itself is to highlight the skills on it that an employer is looking for. So sometimes an employer will, in describing the job, they'll describe the skills that they're looking for. So they may have a section that says they've got essential criteria that they're looking for. So we need a person who has got this, this, and this. And they may have a set of desirable characteristics as well. So it's important to decide which ones are absolutely vital for doing the job and which ones you can get away with. And then think about the company itself and think about what sort of organization it is. Is it a particularly ethical company, or is it all about profit making? Just think about the company and its values and how you mold yourself into that kind of position. So are you the sort of person that they're looking for? So obviously, if you've got a job description, that's a lot easier to do. But I realize that a lot of you are probably at the point where you're trying to create a generic CV that you may tailor to a company later. So if you haven't got a job description yet, we're going to help you to create a generic CV that you can then tailor to an actual employer when you get a job description. So it's really hard to read the slides when there's writing over the top of them. So what you can do if you haven't actually got a job description is look for similar jobs that similar employers may have advertised, even if you don't want to apply for that particular job, just to get the feel of what job descriptions look like, what employers are looking for, to get some ideas. Okay, so I realize there's people interacting already in different ways, but those of you who are sitting very patiently listening, thank you. But we're going to get you typing in the chat just to participate in this session. So those of you who are participating quietly at the moment, I'd like you to have a go at typing some generic skills into the chat. So you are going to need a lot of skills to do jobs, and I want you to think about the skills that you already have that you think that you're going to articulate on your CV. So type in the chat. I've mentioned a few things like communication skills and teamwork, but there are lots of other skills that employers are going to want. So do you want to start typing in the chat things that you can think of that you want to put on your CV? So yes, Percy's good communication skills, excellent. Pamela's put creative, yes, definitely. And even if you're not an artistic person, you can be creative in a job role. You can be innovative, you can have problem solving skills. It's not just about being creative in an artistic sense. So good.
Please mute.
Persis, yes. Leadership skills, excellent. Christopher, critical thinking skills, definitely. Technical skills, yeah. Deborah, yeah.
Irene, shut up, dude. I'm trying to learn.
Definitely people skills, Deborah. So the ability to interact with individuals, with your managers, with your colleagues. So you could.
So I'm basically the host now. So if you please mute.
You can talk about your ability to work in a team, as well as, yeah, wanting to work with other people. Yeah, time management, Persis, excellent. Good communication skills, definitely.
I said I'm the host now. Mute up. Mute up, Amanda. Mute up. Mute up, Amanda. Mute up. I'm a kicky.
Punctuality, definitely. Data, yes. Data analysis skills, you would probably articulate that on your CV, but yes, the ability to look at data, definitely. Business skills, yes, excellent. You could put business awareness or you could call it commercial awareness. But yes, having an awareness of what's going on in the business environment, that's a good one. Oh, a good gang here. So leadership, communication, self-management and adaptability. That's a good one that we haven't seen. Yes, adaptability. Yes, computer proficiency. Whoever typed that one, that's a good one. Emotional intelligence and empathy. Yes, excellent. All these are good things. Analytical skills, emotional intelligence. Yep, attention for detail. Excellent. And ability to work under pressure. Yep, IT skills. Good. Communication and problem solving, time management, excellent. Negotiation skills, that's a good one we haven't seen yet. Good. Teamwork, communication skills, excellent. Brilliant. There's a really good list there. Excellent. Right, can I go back to the slides, Ruby? Yeah.
Yep.
Brilliant.
You can share now.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, where did we get to? So this was my list. Teamwork, initiative, creativity, we had all of those. There's a few extra ones that you didn't get. So being able to plan and organise. So that's something that employers look for. We got leadership, being able to show motivation. Is another one that I don't think we got, and dedication. We got communication and organisation skills. I think we got negotiation skills. I don't think we got research in there. Somebody had put data, but I don't think we got research. We had data analysis, time management, and attention to detail. Presentation skills is something that we didn't have in our list, but I think we had business awareness as opposed to commercial awareness. So that's good. Professionalism, there's another one. Cultural awareness, resilience. Employers are all interested in all these kind of things, and the ability to work under pressure. So big variety of stuff that I'm sure you all have and have demonstrated in different areas of your life. And it's important to be able to articulate all of these things on your CV. Okay, so these are the skills that you're needing, and all these employers, they're very needy people, these employers, aren't they? So if they need all of these skills, the important thing for you is to be able to demonstrate where you have developed these skills that you've got, where you've shown them in your day-to-day life. Now, employers realize that you're only at university, you've not had years and years of work experience yet. You may have had a small part-time job, or you may have done a small internship, but you haven't had years of experience. So they're not expecting you to be able to have work examples of all these skills, but they are interested in you being able to demonstrate where you've shown your organisation skills or your leadership or your creativity. So next thing to type in the chat is to have a go at thinking where you may have gained these skills. So where do you think you've gained or demonstrated dedication, motivation, for example? Where have you demonstrated teamwork that you could use on your CV to demonstrate to the employers that you've got all of these skills? So type in the chat. So where do you think you've demonstrated leadership? Where do you think you've demonstrated planning and organising? Where have you demonstrated communication skills, for example? Let's have a look. Right, so yes, you've definitely had research skills when you were doing your dissertation. Excellent, yeah. Volunteering, yes, Esther. At high school, Alexander, what specifically at high school? What did you do at high school to demonstrate these? Doing an internship? Yep. As a course representative, excellent. So yes, you demonstrated your leadership skills, and perhaps if you're on some sort of committee, you may have demonstrated some organisation skills when you were a course representative, and you may have had to put forward the opinions of students with members of academic staff. So you may have got a little bit of negotiation skills in with being a course rep. Good. Youth work, absolutely. So you possibly had to demonstrate your communication skills, talking with, you know, other students who are younger than yourself, and you're demonstrating responsibility whenever you do youth work. Yeah. Doing a group work, definitely. Demonstrating your team working skills and possibly some empathy as well, and possibly some planning and organising. Absolutely. And yes, internship, definitely demonstrated lots of skills. Competitions, yes, you're probably demonstrating that you've got some motivation, dedication towards whatever it is you're competing in. You may have been practicing whatever it is that you've done for a long time. So you've demonstrated dedication there. Good. Group assignments, definitely. They're not always easy, are they, working in groups? There's always some people who do more work than others, and sometimes you need to be a strong leader to help groups work effectively together. And sometimes there's some planning and organising going on in the background, and definitely leadership skills. Chair of a family council, definitely leadership, Deborah, yeah. At college, Nana, yes. Group projects, oh, we were a class secretary, definitely. So you would have had communication skills definitely within there. Time management, attending classes on time. Yeah, as a teaching assistant, school, clubs, brilliant. Oh yeah, somebody was a sales assistant in a pharmacy, so definitely dealing with customers. Then you were demonstrating your communication skills, and you were probably demonstrating your business awareness as well if you worked in a shop. Absolutely. At home, when you help families, problem solving, absolutely. You can get examples from absolutely anywhere. So as long as you've got something specific that you can talk about, then yes, you can demonstrate skills even in home situations as well. Presentation skills during class, definitely. Team leading and facilitating, yeah, again, lots of times when you're demonstrating your communication skills. Church fellowship, absolutely, that's a good one, Beatrice, yeah. And yes, if you run an online business, absolutely. So you've got business awareness, you've probably got some data, using data, you've probably got IT skills, absolutely, that you're demonstrating. And yes, when you're doing teamwork, you're definitely demonstrating negotiation skills. Excellent. Brilliant. So there's some really good ideas there of situations that you have been in your life where you're demonstrating the kind of skills that employers are looking for. And as you've seen, it can be from anywhere in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to have come from work experience. So an employer knows that at your age, you haven't had a huge number of years of work experience. They're not expecting you to have. You may be only applying for an internship, and you're doing that in order to get some experience. So it's absolutely fine if you haven't got much work experience to talk about. The main thing is to recognise that you've got the skills that they need and that you've gained them from different areas of your life. Now, if you've got hobbies, interests, you've done group work, perhaps you've done some church fellowship, perhaps you've volunteered as a youth leader, you've taken a committee position, you've been like a prefect at high school, for example. It's good to have a variety of different things in your life that you can show these skills from. So we don't want the examples to always come from the same place. But yeah, it doesn't always have to be work experience. Okay. So the important thing, as I said, is showing a variety. So you have some examples that you've come from your social life, working in teams, doing hobbies and interests. You may have some examples from work experience. Perhaps you participate in some kind of sport or activity like that when you're working in teams, and perhaps some of your examples come from education. So the best thing to do for you before you actually start writing your CV is to get a great big piece of paper, write out all the things that you've done, and get a big piece of paper with all the skills that you've got, and try and match them up and see, okay, I may have done teamwork when I played football. I may have got presentation skills from when I did presentation in church, for example. You may have done some volunteering, and you may have had to organise an event. So think about which different skills came from which different area of your life, because it's quite easy to demonstrate teamwork in lots of different places, and it's quite easy to demonstrate communication skills in lots of different areas, but you don't want to keep putting communication skills over and over again. You want to put a variety of skills on there. So having a list of different activities that you've done and picking out which skills came from which place, then you've got a nice overall picture. Because what we want to do is create a jigsaw. All the areas of your life have created the very employable you, and we need to show how that jigsaw has all pulled together. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the actual CV itself just for a little bit, and then we'll get you practicing writing some of the parts of that CV. So the important thing about a CV is that it's not a legal document. It doesn't have to contain absolutely everything you've done in your life. The purpose of that CV is to get you an interview, and the CV has to show a snapshot of you and the experience that you've got, but you need to be quite selective. So I work with a lot of students writing CVs, and they start off saying, oh, I haven't done anything. I can't think of all the things that they've done. And then when I do that exercise that we've just done, thinking about the different activities, they then go completely the other way and try and think absolutely everything from their life in there. You've got to get a little bit of a balance in between. So you've got to think about what the employer wants to know, and that's the skills that you've done, and think about what you can leave out. So we'll go through that in a little bit more detail in a minute. But the main purpose, as I say, of that CV is to get you an interview. Now, they can ask you all the detail about the hobbies and interests that you do and the part-time jobs you may have had, and they can ask you that in the interview itself. So what that CV needs to do is to tempt them. It needs to flag their interest, think, oh, this is a person who I want to talk to. So they'll invite you for interview. So it needs to have enough detail to grab them and invite you. And then you can elaborate on the rest of the detail when you get to the interview. So you don't need to tell them absolutely everything about all the different activities that you've done. You just need to be quite selective. So a CV needs to be a constantly updated document. You will never have finished it. So every time you do an activity or a different piece of volunteering or a different church organisation, whatever it is that you do, you can be adding it into your CV. And the experience that employers are interested in needs to be quite recent. So if you think that a particular employer is going to want you to be able to negotiate well, and you've got an example for negotiation which is quite old, maybe it's 3 or 4 years ago, then if you do a new activity that shows negotiation, you might take the old example off and replace it with a new one. So you're constantly going to be updating your CV so that it's up to date. Ideally, most of your examples should be within the last couple of years. So they don't really want to know about the you from 10 years ago, because they're going to employ the you that is the age that you are now. So whilst you can show dedication, motivation throughout your life, having practiced a particular skill, for example. Ideally, most of the skills that you want to put on there, the evidence needs to be relatively recent. Okay, so yeah, you're going to constantly update it and keep coming up with new examples. Ideally, it needs to be able to be read fairly quickly. Employers get lots of CVs, lots of applications, and they don't want it to be pages and pages and pages of an essay. They need to be able to skim read it quite quickly. And of course, it needs to advertise your strong points. They need to jump off the page. So having a really nice formatted document is important. But for you at this stage, the important thing is to make it quite generic so that you can adapt it to lots of different employers. And then when you do get a job description that you can tailor it to, it's quite easy to do. You don't want to set to and have a new document every time. Some employers have an application form to fill in online as well. It depends who you're applying to, but your CV needs to be the base for completing those application forms. Okay, so what you've got to do is think about who is going to read this document. And once you've sent it off to an employer, different people may read it at different stages. And it needs to work well for all of those people at different times. Now, it may be somebody in the HR, the human resources team at the organisation that you've applied for. It may be a recruitment agent who is helping different employers to find talented young people to work for them. It may be some text matching computer program that the employer is using to pick out text on the CVs. So it's very unlikely at the first stage to be the person that you would end up working for. It's likely, as I say, to be a first round sift of CVs. It's unlikely to be the person who interviews you. So it's got to grab the person's attention. And that person may not actually be an expert in the field that you're going to be working in. So you've got to make the language so that it's understandable by somebody who may not be an expert in that field. So if you're going in for a job in engineering, for example, the person in the HR team may not be an engineer. So you can't presume that that person understands everything that you've done in your life. You've got to spell out for them how you've gained the skills that you have. So as I say, it's got to work on several levels because the person who's going to interview you may read it later. So it's got to have enough detail for them as well. So that first person who reads it, they're the very important first person because they have the power to say yes or no. And they're the person who's seeing all of these CVs right at the very beginning. So they're looking for a certain criteria. And if they think your CV looks good, then you're going to go on the yes pile. And you may get your CV looked at by somebody else who's a bit more of an expert in the field that you're going into. Whereas if that person says no, your application's over. So that first person is looking for a really neat, well laid out, easy to read, professional looking document. They may have a rule of 1 page or 2 pages for that particular employer. Most employers need 2 pages and some need a cover letter as well. So you need to follow the rules. So whatever you do, don't send in a document that's 3 or 4 pages long. It has to be a maximum of 2 pages. It needs to have impact for that person. It needs to have really neat, obvious headings for education, for work experience, for volunteering, for hobbies and interests. So it's obvious what you've done in your life at a glance. And obviously it needs to be spell checked. We can't have spelling mistakes on there. This is the most important document you've ever created in your life. So you need to spend as much time as you can getting it as perfect as you can, because if you don't get this right and you've got spelling mistakes on here, how is an employee going to trust you to work in their workplace and get documents right? So definitely spell check it. And that person, that first person who looks at it, needs to see that you've taken care to use similar kind of language that's in the job description. So if they talk about leadership skills, you would use the phrase leadership skills. If they talk about being a team player, you would talk about being a team player. You wouldn't talk about being a team worker. You would use the same sort of phrases that they did. They want to know that you've read their job description and understand what they're looking for. So it's best to mirror the language that they've used in their job description. Okay. So as I said, this person is likely to have hundreds of CVs perhaps to look at, and they may only look at each document for a few seconds, because if they've got 500 to look at and all they're doing is a first look to decide who's being taken forward to the next stage, they may literally only look at your document for a few seconds. So they're not reading the detail. So it needs to have impact just by looking at it for that first person to put you on the yes pile. So it's all about what it looks like, how neat it is, how well laid out it is, and how good those headers are, so that that person can see at a glance that you're the sort of person that they're looking for. So you've got to have an impact with that first person. So we are going to show you some examples in a minute. Now, does that sound fair? It doesn't sound very fair at all, does it? You may be the most qualified person for the job, but if your CV doesn't give that first good impression, you may be overlooked. And lots of other people are playing the game of applying for jobs, so you've got to play the game too. You've got to create a really good looking document, because it may be that makes the difference between, you know, you moving to the next stage or not. Okay, so that first person doesn't actually read the text. They're looking at the layout, they're looking at your headings, and they're looking at the overall feel of the document. The next person who looks at it may be the actual person who's going to read the text. Now, even these people may not read all the detail. They haven't got a lot of time, so it's still got to be succinct, still got to be informative, but still got to have really good impact. Now, if you're creating a 2-page document, you don't want to put the really good stuff about yourself at the bottom of page 2, just in case they don't turn over, just in case they don't scroll down and read the second page. You need to ensure that there's some really good stuff on page 1. And what you've got to do is think about where people look on a page. So if you've got a piece of A4 paper with a lot of text on it, the first bit you read is the top of the page, and you start reading down the left-hand column. So if you think about a letter F on a page, the top third between the 2 bars of the F and the left-hand side, that's where you get the most impact on a piece of A4 paper. So you've got to have some really good stuff about yourself in that top third, and you've got some important, impactful, strong words at the start of your bullet points in that left-hand column. Now, a lot of people make the mistake when they're creating a CV of putting a list of dates down that left-hand side and putting all the information towards the right. But if all you can see down that left-hand side is just dates, you've lost the impact of that left-hand column. So the template that I'm going to give you to have a go with will help you to get that information into that impactful left-hand column. So yeah, think about, always remember the letter F. So don't put your dates in the left-hand column. Now, at this point, yes, this person is reading it, but they're still skimming. So every word counts. You've got to be really succinct, really precise to get across the impact. At this point, also be careful with what embellishments you use in your document. You don't want too much in terms of underlining, bold, different fonts. You've got to keep it as nice and simple as you can. Ideally, just stick with bold for your headings. Underlining tends to look a bit messy if you try and use it in combination. So as I say, the template I'm going to give you just has bold text for the headings, which looks a lot more professional. Okay, so that second person who is reading the actual text, they want to know about your education. That's the good bit. Once you get a bit older and you've got a lot more work experience, then your work experience may be the important thing. But at your stage, they want to know that you're getting some good grades, that you're concentrating with your studies. So whatever qualifications you've got, get them at the top. That's the good stuff that they want to know about you. They want to know if you've got any work experience. It doesn't matter if it's not particularly relevant to the job that you're applying for. Any work experience in a shop, wherever you've worked, is good to show that you have been responsible. So an employer has given you work and you've turned up on time, you've been punctual, perhaps you've talked to customers, you've been the professional face of that organisation to the customer. You may have handled money if you've been serving customers. Perhaps you've worked in a restaurant or a cafe, for example. They've trusted you with money and you've been responsible. So it doesn't matter what experience you've done. You've shown some skills whilst you've done it. So get it in there on that first page. And then they want to know that you are a nice, rounded, interesting person who's proactive and will fit into their team. So nobody wants to employ somebody who's not very nice. Nobody wants to employ somebody who's really boring, who will just turn up to work and have nothing to talk about. They want to employ people who are interesting, who've got things to say, and who will be friendly at tea break and lunchtime.
I saw you, Diana. It was Diana. It was Diana. I don't know your
They want to employ people who they want to have a chat with. So they want to go for lunch with, during the breaks. They want to have somebody who's interesting to have a cup of coffee with, or whatever it is at the tea break. So anywhere you can show that you're a rounded, interesting person. So as well as getting good grades, having a little bit of experience, but it doesn't matter where, lots of hobbies and interests, stuff that you do at the weekend that you can talk about, because they want to know that you're a nice person. So that's kind of what you're trying to get across. So it doesn't have to have huge amounts of technical detail at this point. Okay, so what you've got to do is you've got to make it easy for them. You've got to use a variety of headings to separate the different activities that you do. And this is what makes you unique. So at your stage in education, most people are going to look similar. You needed to get good grades to get into university. So you've probably all got very similar grades from school, for example, but they want to know what makes you unique, what makes you different to everybody else whose CV they're looking at. So you've got to make those transferable skills that we talked about stand out. So if you're into going hiking in the outdoors, if you're interested in playing sport, if you play a musical instrument, for example, these are all the things that make you unique. And you can show dedication and motivation and teamwork and all those things from all the different hobbies and interests that you have. And these are all things that an employer wants to know. So make it obvious, make it easy for them to be able to pick out all of these interesting things. Okay, so that's the second person. It's still going to be quite concise, but there's got to be some good information in there. And then finally, the last person who will actually read your CV is the person who's going to interview you. So you've got to get through several stages of recruitment before you actually get to a person who you might actually talk to. So that final person, who's the one who's going to meet you at the interview, they're going to look through your CV on the morning to find some interesting things to talk about. So they need some brief bullet points that tell them what you did, highlight the skills you've got, but has just enough information that can tempt them to think, oh, okay, I can ask them a question about that. So things that they can elaborate on. You don't want to give loads of examples. You don't want to give loads of detail, but give them a minute to elaborate on. You've got to demonstrate your motivation to work for that particular company. And that's why mirroring their language is really helpful. So looking at their job description and choosing words that they use, so it's obvious that you've used their job description. What they don't want to think is that you've sent one CV off to every company in town, and just sent the same one to everybody, because each employer is a little bit different and they want to know that you've tailored it to them. And they want to see that you've got a bit of a personality. So when you're talking about your hobbies and your interests, you can have a little bit of humour in there. That is absolutely fine. Okay, so that's it. 3 different levels of people who are going to read your CV. The first person is just looking at the look and feel of the document, how well laid out it is, how professional it looks, that it's got plenty of good headings to show that you've got a variety of skills. And they've got the ability to say yes or no, and it needs to be yes. Then that second person is just checking that you've got the right skills for the job, that they're going to choose you to go for interview. They need to see you've got some good grades, some good experience, and then a variety of hobbies and interests and activities that you've done to demonstrate all of those skills that you've got. And then that final person who's going to interview you needs a little bit more detail in order to be able to think about things to elaborate on in the interview itself. So it is a tricky thing to do, is writing a CV, and it is time consuming, but we're going to give you some pointers to have a go. Okay, now this is not a time to be modest. The only person who is going to sell you to an employer is you. So finding a way to say that you've got the skills that you have with the evidence that comes from your activities makes it sound very professional. It doesn't sound like you're bragging about anything, which is what I find students your age have difficulty with. They don't want to brag about themselves. They almost want their experience to speak for itself. But you've just got to make sure that you make it obvious to the employer that you've got those skills, because everybody else who's sent their CV will be also doing the same. So yours has got to stand out. So yeah, it's not a time to be modest. You've got to sell yourself. And you may only have a few seconds to make that good impression. So, make sure you take it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing these slides and I'm going to share a CV document. And I won't put it in the chat yet, but after we've finished, I'll put it in the chat so you can open it, you can save yourself a copy, and then you can edit it and put your details in. So if I stop sharing that, and then, has anybody got any questions at this point before I share the document?
Yeah, I think somebody put a question in the chat. Okay, the person says, is it necessary to include in your CV your travel experience on business trip? If yes, in what heading, please?
So yes, you could talk about travel. I'll show you where you could put it when I open the document. Any sort of travel, even if it was on a business trip as opposed to on a holiday, or if you were backpacking or something like that, it builds your cultural awareness. So yes, I'll show you when I open the document where you could put that experience. That's good. Anything else? Difference to your CV and a cover letter. Okay, so the document that I'm about to show you is a curriculum vitae CV. So this is the concise summary of your experience and what you've done and the different skills that you've got. A cover letter is an actual letter that you write to the employer. It says, "Dear whoever, I saw your job advertised in wherever it was that you saw it. Please find my CV attached for your attention. I would love to work for you because I have all these skills. It's more like a letter that you write to them. I can show you some examples of a cover letter later on if you need to. But it's basically a letter that accompanies your CV. Not every employer wants one. Most will just want the CV itself. Okay, so let me share. Let me just get the document open and then I'll share it. So this is a Word document, so it's nice and easy for you to edit. I've tried to make it applicable to you at your stage of education. And hopefully it will be easy enough for you to edit. So the first bit at the top of the page is your name and your contact details. Now, there is no need to have curriculum vitae or CV or anything like that as a heading. You're applying for a job. They know that the document that you're going to send them is a CV. So there's no point putting CV at the top. Get your name up there. Your name nice and big and bold. It needs to be obvious. If you have a shortened name that you call yourself, that could go in brackets, but make sure it's obvious what your name is. Now, you do need your address, your email, and a mobile number up there in that header perhaps. But don't take up too much space, because remember what I said about that letter F. So the employer wants to get some good information in that top third of the page, so that you mustn't take up lines and lines and lines with all of your contact details. So remember, that first person may turn you down. They're not going to need your name and address. The second person may turn you down. It's only the third person who's actually inviting you for interview who actually needs an email address. So they just need to know that you're resident in the country that you're applying for, and that you're able to work. Perhaps if you need a work permit, you could put in there that you've got a visa, for example. But they just need to know your contact details. So just keep it as concise as you can, make your name big and bold, and just take 2 or 3 lines perhaps with address, mobile and email address. And then if you wanted to have a line separating it, that's absolutely fine. If you wanted to put a bit of colour in there, you could, but make sure that header is as concise as it can be and doesn't take up more than a couple of lines at the top, because what we want to get is your education nice and concise at the top. So here I've put a variety of different institutions. So if you're currently at university, put that nice and bold, and the degree that you're doing and the dates that you are doing that degree. Now, can you see here that I've put the dates in the right-hand column out of the way? So rather than putting them in the left-hand column, as I said, and it ending up just like a list, the words that we want to see in that left-hand column are University of Ghana. Get it nice and big and bold at the top, and the degree that you're doing. We need to know the dates because we need to see everything in chronological order, but get the dates out of the way in the right-hand side. So nice, big, strong heading, education in bold. You can make it slightly larger text if you wanted to, but there's no need to underline or anything like that. Just keep it nice and big and bold. And then if you want to put some of the different subjects that you've studied within your degree, and you want to put your average marks so far, whether it's your first year or whether it's your final mark, just to show the kind of grades that you're getting. Now, it's up to you whether you put your average grade at the end or whether you put a grade for each of the different modules individually. It's up to you what you want to highlight. If you're getting good grades for all of them, then, you know, but if you're going to put grades in brackets after each subject, you need to do it for all of them. So sometimes it's easier just to put one average. Okay, so this is the thing that you're doing at the moment. You're at university, so that needs to go at the top, because they need to see each section of the CV needs to be in reverse chronological order. So get your university top, and then wherever you did your A-levels, wherever you did your O-levels or GCSEs or whatever it is, the qualifications you've got, put it in reverse chronological order. So obviously put your dates in here. These are just examples. So put the name of your school, where you did your A-levels. You can list your A-levels and put the grades that you got. At this point, is it GCSEs that you do, or is it O-levels? Sorry if I've got that wrong. Whatever qualifications you do prior to A-level, there's no need to list every subject at this point. Obviously, once you're doing a degree, the lower qualifications that you've got start to become less important. They want to know about your degree. So leave yourself plenty of space so you can talk about the subjects you're studying at university. You can summarise everything that you did prior to A-level. So here I've just put 8 subjects, including English, Maths and French, and you can put the grades that you got. But yeah, don't put a great long list of everything you did at age 16. You can list your A-levels, but no need to list anything before that. Okay, so that's your education, and it only needs to take up about a quarter of a page, so that we've got your name, your contact details, and all your education is in that top third of the page. So that's the good stuff that they want to know about you. Okay, now if you have any work experience, that's what comes next. If you haven't got any work experience, but you have some volunteering, for example, or you've got some positions of responsibility, then you decide what order you want your next sections to come in. But if you've got work experience, then put that next. So again, we want something nice and bold and impressive in that left-hand column. So always put your dates at the right-hand side. See where I've put summer 2021 there. So put the name of the company. So here, Garner Properties in Accra, and the job that you did on the top line. The aim here is to try and be as concise as possible. We don't need the whole address of the company. We just need to know where the company is and the job that you did. And each of the companies are listed separately. Now, as you can see here, I've put just a couple of bullet points under each of these 2 jobs. So the first one was a marketing internship, and the next one, they were a customer service operative. They basically worked in a shop. Now, this is where you do what I explained earlier. You think about the skills that you've got, and you think about the experiences that you've got where those skills were demonstrated. So this person, I've called her Ruby. Ruby's still on the chat, smiling at me. Good. She had a marketing internship, and within this job, she was responsible for sourcing new suppliers for the marketing department, which required her to show her initiative. Okay, so start with a nice, strong action word, and I'll give you a table of those in a minute. Tell us briefly what you did, so sourcing new suppliers, and the skill that was demonstrated, all within the same sentence. So we don't want a huge amount of detail as to what you did at that job, and we don't want just lists of skills because they're not particularly helpful. We want the person reading your CV to say, oh yeah, they sourced some suppliers. Oh yeah, that sounds like something where they could show initiative. So make sure the 2 match. So the sentence needs to stand alone. I was responsible for sourcing new suppliers, showed my initiative, and I managed to save the company a load of money, whatever it is you did. Okay, so that's one standalone sentence with one skill, with one task. And then also, while they were at that internship, they helped with a new database for the office, which showed a different skill. So this is where we're going to talk about computer literacy or data analysis or whatever it is that you want to demonstrate. So again, nice strong word to start with, assisted with the introduction of a new database, which showed my attention to detail or my data analysis skills. Okay, so Ruby has decided that this particular internship that she did showed initiative and computer literacy. It probably showed lots of other skills as well. It probably showed confidence, it probably showed teamwork, it probably showed communication skills. But she's got lots of other experience where she also demonstrated teamwork and communication skills. And we don't want to put it all in one place. So she saved teamwork and communication skills for somewhere else on her CV. This is a job, so she showed more job-related skills in this particular example. Okay, so that's the marketing internship. The other thing that she did when she was a little bit younger was she worked in a shop in the mall. Okay, so what happened at that place was she was communicating regularly with customers, working in a local store, which improved her confidence dealing with people. Okay, so again, nice strong word to start with, what you did and the skill that's been demonstrated. And she also worked with colleagues to provide excellent customer service, which developed her team working skills. Okay, so that kind of job, when you're dealing with people, you're working in a team, those are the most obvious places to put things like communication and teamwork. So think for you, what experience you've got, and which are the most logical skills to pick out from those particular experiences. Okay, so that's Ruby's work experience. Now, she's also got lots of other things that she does in her life. So it's up to you now what order you put those other things in. So this is a 2-page CV, and I'll just flick through to show you the other headings. So I've put other experience here. So it's not paid work experience. It's more like volunteering. You could call this volunteering if you wanted to. But if you want to make it look like it's a bit more work-based, you could call it, I don't know, internship or whatever it is you want to call it. Ruby also has some positions of responsibility. She was a school prefect, so lots of skills came from that. And she was a treasurer at a church, and she was also on a sports club committee. So those are good positions of responsibility. She's also got some hobbies and interests, and she's really good with computers, she's good at languages, and she's got some referees. So these headings, it depends on what you've done as to which headings you use. Some people may have lots of work experience, and that takes up the whole of page 1. And on page 2, you could have volunteering, hobbies, travel. The person who wanted to talk about travel. But if you haven't got much work experience, you may want to put business travel on page 1. If that's more impressive than the stuff that you've got from your hobbies. It's up to you what you use as your headings here. So let's have a look at Ruby's. Her other experience, which I said you could also call volunteering. She organised a fundraising event for a local shelter, which raised lots of money, which required initiative. So obviously fundraising requires you to show how innovative and creative you are. She's put that it required initiative and perseverance. She also served in a soup kitchen, which developed her empathy because she was looking after people who were a lot less fortunate than her. And while she was working for this shelter, she decided to persuade her manager from the mall where she had a job to donate unsold fruit and vegetables. So she used her persuasion skills, or you could say negotiation skills. So whatever you think you've got, again, nice strong word to start with: organised, served, utilised. Tell us what you did. Variety of events raised over this amount of money, which required initiative. So each sentence stands alone. Nice strong word, what you did, and the skill that's relevant to that particular activity. Okay, so Ruby has also had some positions of responsibility. She's been a school prefect, where she assisted younger children with their schoolwork. Communication skills. She attended regular meetings with teachers, which helped her powers of persuasion and negotiation. For the church committee, she helped compile the accounts. That's all about attention to detail, helped her to recognise the importance of good record keeping. She handled money from donations, which required her to be extremely responsible. and she participated in committee meetings, which helped increase her confidence. Okay, so you can see there's a pattern here. Nice, strong word. Tell us what you did and tell us what skill is being demonstrated. And for each of the different things that you do, perhaps 2 or 3 bullet points for each. If it was something that you did for a long period of time, perhaps you were the treasurer for your church for 3 or 4 years, then you got lots of skills from it. If it was a volunteering activity that you only did for one afternoon, perhaps just 1 bullet point. Something you did for 6 months, perhaps do 2. So give each activity that you've done the amount of weight it deserves on your CV. So if you have been doing something all your life, perhaps playing a musical instrument, you've showed lots of dedication throughout your life, you can give that plenty of detail. But yeah, something that you've only took up last week perhaps only deserves 1 bullet point. So think about the things that you've done and how much weight they deserve. So here she's on a sports club committee, responsible for league tables, which involved data handling, volunteered to organise a party, created all of the marketing material which needed her to be creative. Okay, so each bullet point needs a different skill. So Ruby has told us about initiative, computer literacy, confidence dealing with people, teamwork, initiative and perseverance, empathy, persuasive skills, communication skills, negotiation, attention to detail, good record keeping, being responsible, confidence, having good data handling skills, being creative. And she's managed to get all of that across by giving us examples of where she's demonstrated those skills. So it's obvious that she's got initiative because she did all that marketing. It's obvious that she's good at working in a team because she's worked with other people in a customer service environment. So you're giving the evidence whilst you're talking about the skill. So that's all the kind of main headings. You can also have a heading towards the end that's about your interests. So you don't necessarily have to pick out too many skills from this, but like being a member of a sports team, for example, keeps you fit and active. You can just point out why you do it, why you enjoy it. Here we've got somebody who does a little bit of independent travel, spent a month backpacking, which developed her ability to cope when things don't go to plan. So you can put a little bit of humour in here. If you spent a summer backpacking and realise that you hate camping, you know, you can put little humorous things in there that show that your personality. Music, she played the piano since the age of 7 and trumpet since the age of 11. Played in the school orchestra where I've made friends for life. Just something nice about you that shows what a nice person you are. Okay, so you don't have to go into too much detail about your interests. Just show that you're a nice, rounded, interesting person. If you like reading, tell them what sort of books you like, if you're particularly into a particular author or a particular genre. If you like watching films, what sort of films? Are you into horror films or sci-fi? And what's your favourite film? You know, just something interesting about you. And then it's useful to put just a sentence at the end about other information. So if you're good at languages, get them in. Employers really like people who can speak multiple languages. And if you're particularly proficient at different computer packages, it's worth mentioning Microsoft Word, PowerPoint and Excel individually. If you're going for a job where there's going to be a lot of data handling, they may actually have Excel as a keyword in their job description. And if it is a computer program that's doing the first sift of your CVs, it's these keywords that are really important. So make sure you mention Word, PowerPoint and Excel separately. And then you need some referees. So these are people that an employer would contact if they're giving you the job, just to check that you are as good as you say you are on your CV. For your university, they'll check that you're getting the grades that you've said. And obviously, if you've got somebody else they can contact who knows you a bit more personally. So this could be somebody from your church who's known you since you were 6, or your sport coach who's known you for the last few years, or somebody who you worked with at a part-time job who's, you know, known you and knows your work ethic, so they can vouch for you. So, but tell them who those people are in the bracket, and just give their email address. There's no need for great long addresses. They're going to email these people, so just put their email address. Okay, so I'm going to put this document in the chat so that you can have a go at editing it. Obviously not right now. You can go away and have a go. Does anybody have any questions about the CV document itself whilst we're looking at it? Okay, if a company specifies its job description, would you still let them know all your skills which may not be in a way related to that job description? Okay, Pamela, so this is what I was saying about at the moment, you're probably creating quite a generic CV. And most employers will want things like team working and communication skills and initiative. But then when you actually read the job description, you may realize that they've asked for them in a slightly different way. So once you've got your CV created nice and generically, it makes it really easy to edit. So if you looked at the job description and it said, we need somebody who's got experience of negotiation, you may have talked about your persuasive skills if you'd been on a committee, for example. So all you would need to do is go into your document and just alter the wording ever so slightly. And it could be the same example, but you would change it and say that you were demonstrating your negotiation skills. Or if they wanted you to show leadership and you talked about working with people, you could then just change the language ever so slightly. So to be honest, having looked at a lot of job descriptions from a lot of employers, apart from the technical stuff that's relevant to specific jobs, they're all looking, at your age, they're all looking for very similar things, because they're going to teach you everything else you need. It's going to be obvious from what degree you're doing, the technical skills that you've got. You could put, if you have specific technical skills, you could add them in to this section at the end here, the other information. So if you're doing engineering, for example, you could say particularly proficient at, and list some of the technical skills that you've got. Or you could have a section under your education at the top here, under your degree, and underneath the modules, and say what technical skills you've learned. So you could list them there. And yeah, obviously if it was in the job description, then you could find a way to weave them in. But to be honest, most internships, most graduate roles, it's the transferable skills that they're looking for on your CV. Okay, some more questions in here. Should there be specific dates? So if you'd done an activity for just a couple of weeks, yes, I would put the 5th of July to the 19th of July. But if you'd done it for a year, you would just put July 2023 to 2024. If it was something that you'd just done over the summer, you could just put summer 2023 if it was obvious it was a summer internship. So yeah, depending how long you were there, you can decide whether you put the actual date or not. For your degree, it's obvious. Most people know that an academic year starts September, October and goes round a calendar year. So you don't have to use 21st of September as the first date of your degree. Just use the year, that's fine. Is religion important in a CV? Isaac, if your religion is important to you and you want to show that it's part of you and your values, then I would put it in. So I would perhaps put it in interests, just say that you regularly attend church and have done all of your life. And I would put what you've gained from it. So you've learned respect and the importance of, you know, I don't know, whatever it is that your faith teaches you. I would put it in your interest section. If you've done some volunteering through church, if you've been on a church committee, or you've looked after younger people through church, then you could put it into one of the other sections. You could put it in volunteering. But yeah, otherwise I would put it in the interest section, just to add something about you and your values. That's fine. Okay, seen a couple of CVs. Is this one tailored towards a geographical location? Not particularly. It was one that I had that was tailored very much to a UK audience, because that's where I normally teach. So I've just changed some of the places and locations in here. So it's not tailored to anywhere in particular. If you are applying for jobs in your own local area, then I don't know what the convention is. Actually, Ruby may be able to help us here. In the UK, we don't put photographs on CVs. Is it a done thing in Ghana, Ruby, to put a photograph on your CV?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a standard to put your photograph on it, you know.
No, I think that's quite a European thing. I've seen French, German, Swiss students tend to put their photos on. We don't in the UK, so it's easier just to leave it off. Okay, where would you put the ability to work under pressure? So you would think about the example that you'd got for where you'd demonstrated working under pressure. So, for example, if you'd had a job where you had to multitask, do lots of different things, or if you'd say you'd done some volunteering and you'd had to do it all in a short period of time, then it could go in that section. If as part of your education you'd had to do lots of exams all in a short period of time, you could put a short line underneath the education section that said, you know, I studied lots of things all at once, which demonstrates my ability to work under pressure. So it doesn't matter where it goes, but it goes with the relevant example of where you've demonstrated that skill. Made mention of the fact that CV should comprise more recent experience, how long that should be. So I would say the employer is employing the you that's the age that you are now, and so they're going to be interested in experiences that are no more than a couple of years old. But if you've got one activity that was, say, 4 or 5 years ago, and it was the only example you'd got of where you demonstrated leadership, for example, I would put it in. If you'd got a more recent example, obviously, you know, use more recent ones, but definitely try and use as the recent experience you've got. But as I say, if there's one particular skill that you think this employer is definitely going to need, and the one example you've got of where you demonstrated it was 4 years ago, still put it in. If this type of work experience. So if you haven't got any work experience, you're going to fill your CV with hobbies, volunteering, committee positions of responsibility, other things that you've done. If you've worked in the family business, if you've volunteered through church, whatever you've done, that's what's going to go in your CV. And it's all where you've built your skills. So please don't worry if you haven't got any work experience. I'm just demonstrating here, if you did have some, that's the kind of things you would say about it. And no, the work experience can be absolutely anything. So as we mentioned here, this Ruby, whose CV this is, she happens to have had a marketing internship and she worked in the mall. But it's the skills that she got from those jobs that are the important things. So she's not necessarily applying for a marketing job here. She could be applying for a job in a finance team, but she's managed to talk about finance because she raised money for her shelter. She was the treasurer of a church committee. So she's got the skills that somebody for a finance role needs. She's got attention to detail. She's got record keeping. And she's also put that she's good at Excel. So the fact that her work experience was in a marketing department doesn't matter. But what she's done is not talked too much about marketing. She's talked about initiative, computer literacy, and the team working and customer service that she got from her mall job. So she's not overdone the marketing because she might want to apply for something entirely different. So it's more about the skills that you've got from it. Doesn't matter what sort of job it is. If you've done anything to do with customer service, put it in. If you've worked in a cafe, coffee shop, restaurant, anywhere like that, you've been dealing with customers. So you have been the professional face of that organization to their customers. So it's really responsible. So it doesn't matter what you've done, as long as you did it well and you gain some skills from it. Doesn't matter what you've done. Thank you, Gloria. That's very kind of you. Is it important to add any workshops you've attended? Now, what sort of workshops have you done? Was it something specific? Oh, let me put the document in the chat. Hold on a minute. So I've just separated work experience from other experience because in this case for Ruby, the work experience was paid and the other experience was volunteering. So you could call it paid work experience and unpaid work experience if you wanted to. It's just to separate it so it's obvious that this is the paid stuff and the other stuff was more volunteering. If you haven't got any paid work experience and everything that you've done was unpaid, you could call it internships or relevant experience. It doesn't really matter what you call it as long as it's obvious what's what. Okay. Now, Ruby, I'm trying to share the document and for some reason it's not got the ability to add it in. Shall I just send it afterwards?
Yeah, I've asked them to complete the form, the feedback form where I would have their email addresses.
Oh, perfect.
So I can send it to their email addresses.
Absolutely, that's probably the easiest.
If everybody can complete the feedback form,
then they'll get the document.
Then I can send them the document. Absolutely. And the recording as well if they want to.
Perfect. Good. So somebody had asked about adding in workshops they've attended. So yes, if they if you've gained a skill from it, you've probably learned something, I expect. It's just important to think about if you're going to put something on your CV, you need to be able to think about a skill that you gained from it. So if you went to a workshop all about data handling and that was the only place where you'd gained experience with data, then definitely put it in. If you did a workshop that was all about creativity, I don't know what it was that you did, and you couldn't think of any other examples where you demonstrated creativity, then yes, definitely put it in. But if all it taught you was something that you'd got other examples of elsewhere, then you might perhaps leave it out. So it depends what you've got, what you've done, and if you've got enough to fill 2 pages without it, then perhaps leave it out. But if it demonstrated a different skill that you haven't got elsewhere, then definitely put it in. Okay, so that was all I wanted to say. Just remember that employers they're just nice people who've got an opportunity for you to go and work for them. And they want you to give them evidence of the skills that you've got. And you've all got these skills. You're all doing university degrees. You're clever, talented people. You're intelligent. You're getting good grades, and employers want to employ you. But you need to sell yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. But it's hard to sell yourself at your age. You're probably not got the confidence to shout about yourself too much, but being able to articulate the skills that you've got in a way that gives the employer evidence, it helps to show the variety of different things you've done in your life. So be positive about all the different experiences you've done, whether you've worked for a family business, whether you work for your church, whether you've volunteered, whether you've done hobbies, interests, you've played sport, whatever it is. All of those experiences have made you you, and it's that unique you that needs to come across in that CV document. So I hope that was helpful. And yes, I'll make sure Ruby's got the CV document, and she'll send you it out so you can edit and create yourself a nice impressive CV. It's nicely formatted already, so just work with it. It's in Arial, it's in 11 point, which is kind of what you expect. It's got the right balance of text to white space, so that's kind of about the level of detail that an employer would be expecting on the CV. So hope that's useful.
Amanda, I think somebody asked a question. Can you please talk about reference too?
Reference.
Yeah, please, can you talk about?
Oh, yes. So somebody who would be your referee is just somebody who can vouch for you. So somebody who's one of your teachers, perhaps from university, or a teacher who remembers you from school, who can vouch for the fact that you're getting good grades. If you've got a personal tutor at university, then that's probably the best person because they can look up your grades. They normally ask for one academic person and one more personal reference. So they don't have to write anything. They just have to be agreeable to provide you with a reference, and the employer would probably contact them after you'd been given the job, and they'd just say, can you confirm that Irene was at the University of Ghana between these dates and that she got these grades? Or can you confirm that Irene worked for you at the mall and she was a nice, responsible person? Yeah, so they just ask some really specific questions about you. So they don't have to write anything in advance. Just contact the person and say, is it okay if you are a referee for me? I'm going for a job. Can I put you down as a reference? If you're in a job and you're applying for a new job, it's okay to put references available on request at the end of your CV, because you might not want a new employer contacting your current employer until you'd got the job, especially if you were going to leave that employer to take up the new position. So you can hold off telling them who your referees are until you've got the job. But I would put your academic one in up front, because it's obvious who your tutor is. But yeah, they don't have to write anything at this point. There's a question about certificate of attendance. Ruby, are you going to do that?
No.
Okay.
You're not giving certificate of attendance.
No, your certificate is you go away and create a CV. How many referees should one use? Persis, most employers just want two, one academic one and one other person who knows you a little bit better. Quite often your university personal tutors probably only met you a couple of times and they've only known you this year. So you would use perhaps an old employer or one of your elders from church, for example, who's known you for a long time. It's best not to use a family reference, but somebody who knows you more personally. Some employers, if it's an actual graduate role, need three, but just for internships or summer roles, for example, they probably only need two. But it would go with two for now until you start going for graduate roles. But yeah, go for two for now. Okay. Yes, we're going
I
to say.
think somebody asked about the font. I don't know if you talked about it already.
I've done this one in Arial and I used 11 point. You can go to 12 if you haven't got much experience and you want the text that you've got to fill the page more, but I wouldn't go any bigger than that. And I wouldn't go lower than 10 because it ends up too small to read. So go with Arial 11 to start with and see how it looks. But yeah, certainly don't go any smaller than 10. Does one's age play any importance? No, absolutely not. Employers are not allowed to discriminate on any bounds like age, ethnicity, gender, anything like that. So no, basically. Just, I mean, you'll notice that I didn't actually put Ruby's date of birth on the CV. That was purposely, so that they don't know how old she is. It ends up quite obvious by the dates that you did your education, but they're not allowed to discriminate based on age. So I'd just, yeah, leave your date of birth off, basically. You're very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, Persis. Just hunt for me if you search Amanda Berry, and if you can't find me, put Loughborough in, because I work at Loughborough University in the UK. Or if you're connected to Ruby, she's connected to me, so I'm sure you can find me in Ruby's contacts.
Somebody raised a hand. Ishmael, do you want to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to, she made mention of the fact that the CV should comprise of a more recent experience. So I would like to know how recent that should be. And also does the type of work experience also matter?
Yeah, so aim for, if you've got plenty of experience in the last couple of years whilst you've been at university, which year are you in at university at the moment? Are you
As
first?
in my level?
Yes, your level.
100.
Are you in your first year, second year?
Yeah.
First year.
First year, okay.
First year. So you can go back a couple of years at school whilst you were doing your A-levels, but I wouldn't go back much more than that. So perhaps 3 years.
And
I mean,
also, should the work experience be in line with the job you are securing?
no, not at your age. By the time you get to my age, they want to know that you've done something that's relevant. But no, as a student, they wouldn't expect you to have relevant experience because you're only young, and it's really hard to get experience until you've done stuff. So no, if you've done something like you've worked in a shop or you've worked in a cafe, for instance, then put it in. You've gained some skills from it. You've showed that you're responsible and that you can turn up on time to do your shift and that you can talk to customers. That's what they're expecting from work experience at your age. They're not expecting a huge amount, and it doesn't matter if it's not in the relevant field. So don't worry. Just put it in whatever it is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. What about the line spacing? I would leave it as it is, Nana. I think I've put it on.
Yeah, the line spacing is when you were talking about the font. So that's when the person asked, what should the line spacing be?
Okay. So I think the document that I've done has, just check its line spacing. I think it's just 1 at the moment. I wouldn't go with any more than 1.5. What you've got to try and think about is the employer wants to know as much about you as they can. So you don't want to spread everything out too much. You want a really good balance of text to white space. So if you end up with loads of columns, it looks rubbish because there's loads of white space all over it. And if you try and make the line spacing too big, then it just looks like you're trying to pad out the document. If you haven't got very much to talk about, it might be best just putting it on a 1 page rather than 2. Then it looks nicely concise and condensed, but not too spread out, if you see what I mean. So go with 1 or 1.5 spacing on the lines, 11 point for the font, and just see what it looks like. And as I say, you're trying to get that good balance of text to white space. Okay. Right, I'm going to stop the recording. You completed school, but waiting certificate is appropriate to put in a CV. Yes, that's absolutely fine. Just put the subjects that you've studied, and if you're waiting for your grades, you know, if you have any idea about what you may be expected to get, then you could put predicted grade, or but it's better just to list this. They're more interested in the subjects that you've studied. If you haven't got your grades yet, that's not a problem.